Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be doing some really basic masking and some bright, gorgeous colours. The finished card of this is just stunning, and I think that is due to the masking and the really clean lines of this one. So we are going to start off today. This does not take too many supplies at all. I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is just a really crisp stamping black pigment ink. The stamp that I'm going to be using today is an oldie but a goodie, and this is the Mini Floral Wonder. Such a good stamp that I have used so many times in so many videos. And I love this one. It's got a little bit of foliage attached to it, and it is a decent size. It's beautiful flower for colouring. You can cut the foliage off and have it just an individual flower. Today I'm going to be covering this entire card front panel in this stamp, and I do want to keep them relatively close together, not perfect, but as close as I can kind of get, so that's why you see me turning it around here, there and everywhere. This is a pigment ink, of course, so I'm going to be able to emboss this all once I've done all of the stamping, and it will stay wet long enough that I can kind of take my time and figure out where I want everything to go. I'm going to go right to the edges. All of my card panels are cut down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. But 95% of the time I would end up cutting these down just a little bit to create a little border when I pop it down onto my card base. And also I really like the ability to kind of take off sometimes the edges, the harsh edges, depending on the coloring technique that you're using. It creates these kind of stronger edges or deeper colored edges from the ink, and so I like the ability to be able to trim those off. It also makes it really easy because the pieces of paper that I buy are 8.5 by 11 inches, so I can just cut those in quarters and it is perfect and easy, and that becomes my card fronts ready to go. I make all of my own card bases and card fronts out of the same cardstock. I use I think it's the Frenchville 110 pound paper, and I get this from Spotlight here in New Zealand, and Australia also have the same brand as well. It used to be called the Recollections brand, and then I think it got rebranded. Just here on screen I'm actually popped one of the stamps onto a piece of Gina K masking paper, and I embossed this as well because this means that my masks are going to last me so much longer, and I have a really clear image to go from. Now I am creating a mask, so I want the outside this time, but I'm also going to cut really nice and neatly so that I can keep the inside mask, and all I do is store it in the back of my stamp set because no doubt I will need that again in the future. So I'm going to be using some Salty Ocean, Candied Apple and Mustard Seed. These are of course the primary colors, and this means that I can get a really nice rainbow really only using these 3 colors, and sometimes it's just nice not to get out 7 or so ink pads to create a rainbow effect, but I'm going to show you how well this version works. So once I have my mask on, I'm going to pop it. That's pretty much the only complete flower right in the middle. I take off half of the release paper from the back, and then that way I can kind of get it positioned before I press it down in place and then remove the other half. I do have a little split there in the end where I cut into it, but that's not going to matter at all because this masking paper has a really nice tack to it and it's going to hold in place. Once I've got that sorted, I can pull off the other half and I know that everything is all lined up, and then I'm just going to press it down so that the edges won't bleed or anything. When I'm going in with my finger daubers, I want to make sure there is a really light amount of ink on there. So you'll always see me kind of test it on a piece of side paper, especially if I'm not sure how much ink is already on there, preloaded on before I even start using them for the day. So I have got my red, which is the Candied Apple, and then I just overlap it a little bit with the yellow, and then the yellow is going to overlap with the Salty Ocean, and that's going to create that really nice green. This is very similar when you kind of watercolor these 2 colors together, very, very similar to Mowed Lawn. In fact, it feels like it is Mowed Lawn to me. Then at this point, once I have the blue, I actually haven't found a good way to make the purple. I don't like when the red and the blue meet. That's the only one that I haven't found a good way to kind of make, so that's okay. I just get out my little purple finger dauber as well. I think that has some really light Villainous Potion on it. So again, this is really easy. I just cross over the red and the yellow. That makes my orange. then my yellow and my blue cross over to make my green, and then I did cheat with the little bit of purple. But still, this is making a really nice rainbow. It means that you don't necessarily have to purchase all of those ink colors in between if you are on a limited budget or you are just starting out and collecting a couple of inks at a time. That's what I had to do. I certainly had to save my pennies and just buy a couple of ink pads that I thought I needed, the next colors in line, and if I kind of came across a color that I thought I needed or I was looking for often, then I would just write it down, and then in a month or two, if I still really needed it, that would be the next color on the list that I would purchase. And then I still only have, I don't have even half of the collection. I think there's probably 60 or 70 or so colors in the Distress Oxide range, and I probably don't have half of that because I just don't need it, and I don't have the space to continuously store more and more ink pads. So yeah, I just really make sure that the colors that I do have are the ones that I need. So once all of these flowers are finished, this is a bright, bold, beautiful, clean lines card so far, and I like the look of this. The masking paper works perfectly. There is no bleeding, no seeping, anything like that. This was a piece of I think this is just normal cardstock, and this was actually in the back of my stamp, and I am just going to cut out the leaves because I want to mask off the leaves. This is probably not a mask that I'm going to keep. It's out of normal cardstock and it doesn't have an adhesive back or anything, so I'm just going to hold it in place. I did add a little bit of low-tack tape, the mint tape, just to kind of close up where I had to cut it, but I'm going to come in with some twisted Citron, just a nice green ink, and this is where I'm going to be able to mask off those leaves and color them in. I did add a little bit more of the low-tack tape to the sides because the mask really wasn't big enough and I didn't trust myself not to get it on my panel already, especially once I've put this much work in so far. I actually do have a video in my channel where I talk about the oxide inks that I would recommend getting first, the colors that I recommend. So if I can find that video, I will pop that the link to that one in the description box below this video. I will also pop links to the products that I have used today. However, I think that you pretty much could make this card using the supplies that you already have. And the other thing that I really love about this card is this was really quick to create. Using the masking and the finger daubers is very quick. Now I did bring in a second color of green finger dauber just to give a little bit of variation there. I think that was maybe the Rustic Wilderness finger dauber. I didn't ink it up again, I just was using it out of the case. So this is where I'm trimming it down just a little bit off each side, and this is where I get to kind of pick and choose. So you can see I took a little bit off each side, and then at the bottom I only took it off one end just because that was the part that I wanted to include. This is the black and white sentiment set from Paper Rose. I am definitely sold on these sets, and this card is going to have big hugs. It is nice and bright and bold, and I want it to brighten this person's day that it is heading to. So I have this gorgeous big bold sentiment there, and there's all different types. There's all different types of sizes and fonts and black and white. There's 12 sheets in there, and there's 2 of each sheet. There is plenty of sentiments for every single occasion. I love these. I actually have 2 packs of them. I have the all occasions and the black and white one, and I think they are both perfect for me. Now, once I decided that there was a little bit of black stamping in there, you can see I added a very fine black matte layer there. Very small. I could have done my trick with the ink, but because I had done heat embossing, I decided not to, and I did add the whole extra layer. I'm using some Ranger Multimedium in the matte finish. That's the glue that's in these glue bottles, and I know that this is going to be really strong and stuck down, and not a chance of this coming up later on if the recipient decides to keep this card for some time. So as I said, it's a really fine layer. I don't know what the measurements are, but it's just much just a smidgy bigger than 4 by 5 1/4 inches, which is what the card front was cut down to. So once I have that on the black layer, I decided that I would pop that down on the card, and then I also thought that the sentiment needed to have the same kind of tiny black layering. It is black writing on a white background, so I thought it needed that extra little bit of black border too. So I'm actually going to pop that down on a little piece of black paper and give that a border. Of course, you could also run around with a marker or give it a little bit of edging ink with a finger dauber or something, but this card has very clean lines to it, so I didn't want to include just some sort of edging inks around the outside. I just want to keep this one all really nice and clean lines, and this card is going to go in the mail, so I kept it very, very flat. Aside from the fact it has a couple of layers of cardstock, there is no real dimension to this one at all, and I'm actually going to pop the sentiment down flat too, so that this is going to mail really, really easily. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this really simple masking using limited supplies, not too many colours of inks, to get a really nice rainbow. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!